All those who are likely to come are here. Um, and so I sent out an agenda. Lily just sent it out again. Is there any change to the agenda anyone wants to make?
Well, were there any changes to the one just made to the one just sent out that weren't in the original one?
Not the, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think, Lily, you just sent it out again as a copy of what was posted, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So.
Dick, I have something, I guess it would be under liaison with other towns. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if I could mention that earlier in the meeting. I only can be on the call for an hour.
Okay, well, let's let Robert go because we always we always do that. And after Robert, we'll take up what you're interested in.
Yeah, sure.
Are there any comments on the minutes? Any changes? If not, I'll take a motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
A roll call vote, remember?
Okay. All those opposed, please state your name. All right, we'll do it the right way. Dick Elkin, aye. Carol?
Aye.
GB?
Am I voting?
Why not?
I just need to be sure.
Yes, you can vote.
Aye. I vote aye.
David?
Aye.
Lily?
Aye.
Okay, Suzanne?
Aye.
And Robert?
Aye.
Okay, you are voting because Chuck Cole is not here. Okay, so we're down one full member. So you're the alternate member. Okay, so Robert, first let's talk. The next two items are related to each other, the Global Covenant of Mayors and some help that you might need. So you want to talk about them?
So item one, which is a topic that's been around for a while, but I have a proposed solution to it. Item one centers around the posting of the original study that was done on vulnerability of the town. And I think this work was originally done like, quite a few years ago. And I tracked the review of this article on the select board meetings. And I found the meeting where people voted to submit the draft to, FEMA and some state organization. And that's fine. The thing was put down as a draft, though the document itself, I don't think says draft on it. In any case, I then tried to find a place where the second round of this happened, where they said it was accepted and everybody, would vote for it. It would be discussed again in another select board meeting. I went through all the select board meetings that occurred after this first one, and it was never mentioned again. Okay, so why is this a problem? It's a problem because the title that was put on it when it was put on the website says draft. So when I submitted the report to the Global Covenant on what we've done with vulnerability, that's what I had to put down. I mean, I put down the same link, which starts off with the word draft. So the consequence of that was that the people reviewing our submission saw draft and said, well, that's not satisfactory. We need to have, what's the final version? Well, it is the final version. No other version was ever created. My proposal is, it was reviewed by one of the covenant evaluators. And my proposal is to change the link. In other words, load the document up and save it without that link, just the title of the document. And then I can link that in the report, and they'll see it. It won't say draft. And I think that will fix the problem.
And
I don't know how people feel about that, but
the place where it should be linked to is the Energy Committee website.
It has to be on an available website. We can put it wherever we wanted it. That was an official
Well, the
town.
committee has I maintain a website for our committee. Looks official. It says Wellfleet Climate Action, Energy and Climate Action Committee. And I can put anything I want there.
Okay, so why don't you load that diagram from the existing link on your computer and then store it, giving it the name which doesn't have draft in it, and tell me where it is, and then I can update.
So where is the document? Can you just forward, to make it easy for me, forward the link to the document I'm going to download and repost?
I thought the document was on the energy site.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Where particularly?
Would it be?
You can see our website, right?
Now, what does shared documents have on it? I know I have found it on the town website, so.
This looks like posting. Is this it? Request. I don't know what shared documents are. Why don't you just send me the link?
Well, draft Wellfleet Hazard. You just passed it. Draft Wellfleet Hazard.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. So now you want me to take the word draft out of the title. Is that it?
That's right.
Okay. I won't do it as we speak, but I'll do it pretty soon, right after the meeting.
Okay. I did spend a lot of time searching subsequent meetings of the Board of Selectmen. It was never mentioned again. So.
Okay. I'll edit this. Does the document itself say draft?
I do not believe so.
Okay. So all I have to do is change the title on the website. I'll change it to as submitted, right?
Right. That's fine.
Okay. So can I just clarify this? So it was submitted to the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board approved it, and that's your understanding. Is that correct, Robert?
It approved submitting it to FEMA and a state agency. Okay, that's what they approved. And the implication was when that came back, they would then change the title or do something, but nothing ever happened again. So it means that when I have to point to the document that does the study, it's that link. I'm not suggesting in any way changing the document itself. I'm simply saying change the link so that it doesn't start off with the word draft.
Okay.
So what state agency did you submit it to?
I don't remember. You know, I'd have to look at the town website. There's both the federal, agency and a state agency. I don't know which one. It is mentioned in the select board report of that decision to submit it.
Okay.
But this should all be irrelevant. I don't know that anybody responded to it because of what else was happening, but there's no further track of information on it.
Okay.
Okay. What
Okay.
else?
I
What
didn't
else?
feel good about my simply changing the title, the link. So that's why I did not do that. Okay, so the next thing is, this is in general, the Global Covenant wants people not to make a claim where there's no evidence. You can't just say we've done X.
Okay.
And so the topic here is, has the town committed itself to zero greenhouse gases by 2050? Because when I go to fill in these questions, and there's specific questions that deal with that topic, I can't point at something that directly says, yes, Wellfleet has committed to zero greenhouse gases by 2050. So
now
why not? First of all, there was a motion at the last town meeting to create a bylaw that says exactly that.
Is there a bylaw written on the website that says that?
It was adopted at the last town meeting.
Yeah, but where is the evidence that said that's happened?
It was adopted at the last town meeting. Town meeting is the legislative body.
Yes, the town meeting have a record which says that.
I thought we went through this last time and we found it on the website, and it was the original motion which had been amended.
Yes.
Okay.
In the minutes. Okay, so even as we speak, the first action item is we now have a Wellfleet final hazard plan. I'll take out the BOS meeting, okay? I'll change that too.
Why don't you just call it hazard plan without,
Final hazard plan.
Well, I mean, should it be final? I mean, Robert, that might also put limiting factors on it too.
What would you like to call it, Robert?
I mean, it has a date and so forth on it. I don't think it really needs to say anything more.
Just
Isn't it called mitigation plan?
No, this is not mitigation. This is vulnerability or hazard. That's the topic that plan was addressed at. And it's one of the requirements of the Global Covenant that such a study be done. And such a study being done as an early action in that category, which is referred to either as hazard or vulnerability.
So it would be proper to call it Wellfleet hazard plan with the date on it, right? I mean, because there may be revisions to it at some point, so calling it final may be limiting.
Well, the hazard plan itself,
Robert, do you prefer to have the word final?
I don't think that's the issue here.
Robert, do you prefer to have the word final in the title or not?
I don't think it's necessary. It just raises another question. It should just say Wellfleet hazard plan, and not have a draft and have the date, and it'll be fine.
That's what it now says.
The word draft.
Effective immediately, it now says Wellfleet hazard plan.
Okay. Okay, so now the other topic we're talking about is evidence on the website for the town having committed to the zero greenhouse gases by 2050. Which Dick, you do absolutely agree that in effect that commitment has been made.
Several times. Once by joining the Global Covenant, Secondly, by the town voting explicitly that by 2050 we would be at net zero. Thirdly, I'm sure the select board has adopted a policy at some point that said the same thing. But the most binding one is we passed a bylaw at the last town meeting that said that was our policy.
Okay, is the bylaw recorded somewhere?
Okay, the process is the town passes a bylaw. There's a motion which makes it official. The next thing that happens is the bylaw is submitted to the Attorney General for review, and then the town publishes its bylaws on its website under the thing bylaws. So you should be able to find it under the bylaws of the town of Wellfleet.
Okay, so all we need is.
Let me go look. Let me go hunt around.
Yeah.
All right.
Carol, did you say that you had found it before? Did you?
I thought that I found it, and it turned out it was in the form originally proposed, and it had been amended and not updated on the website. Does anybody else remember that?
Yes, but you were looking at the article at the town meeting, not the. Well, anyway, what would it be called if I want to search for it? Here's the.
See, that's a key step in the mitigation thing, is the decision to commit to doing that. So that's why, from the global government's point of view, that's an essential step. And if it isn't 2050, you can put down some other commitment that's made, but you know that simply says you're not there yet.
Okay, so I don't see 2050 anywhere in the town bylaws.
Dick, at the beginning of those bylaws, it looked like it was dated August 30th, 2019.
Most recently amended. Okay, so this is not up to date. Good point. So I won't find it here. Okay, so it may not have been done. I will check with the town hall to see if the amended bylaw has been that was updated in last year's town meeting, is now on the website. Okay, I'll take that action, Lily.
Okay. All right, that fixes two obstacles. So I'd be very happy if I got those two fixed.
Okay. So let's go back to the agenda. Is that this? No, this is the minutes we covered. Okay, let's go back to the calendar. I had it up a while ago, but.
And then you said that David could talk, is that right?
Excuse me?
You said that the next thing was that David could talk after Robert.
Yes, David.
That would be under old business or new business, maybe? Is that right?
One of the two, or the last thing about liaison with other towns, it could be under that. But in any case, it's just an FYI for the moment. I got contacted by the Cape Cod Climate Change Collaborative to potentially do a webinar on climate action on the Outer Cape. They are in the middle of deciding if they want to have a series of webinars that would cover each of the regions of Cape Cod. So they have one for Mid Cape, Upper Cape, Lower Cape, et cetera. It's not definite that they're going to even do it yet, but I should hear, I guess, a decision about that by the end of the month or maybe even mid-May, and they'd be spaced out over some period of time, and they would handle the publicity. I haven't done any work on it at all. I want to mention it to the committee, but I do believe that much of the work that was done for that Outer Cape Climate Action PowerPoint which had a lot of detail about actions that we had done in Wellfleet and a little bit less on other towns, would be a foundation for the presentation for that webinar if it comes to pass. So it's just a maybe activity right now. I told them I'd be happy to talk about it further, but I'll hear back from them again at some point. So just wanted
would you send that around? Because I'm not sure which specific PowerPoint you're discussing.
Yeah, it's the one that we spent a great deal of time going back and forth on and editing, but I will send the most recent version around.
Okay.
Could I make a comment in this area where I haven't seen it mentioned very much? This is another thing that the Global Covenant cares about, but so do a lot of other people. And the issue is looking at different groups of people in the town who are affected in different ways. So for instance, one example would be seeing elderly people. But there are other categories like that. This is all, part of the general movement to focus on who is affected most by what, and are they being considered in the proposals that one enacts. I don't know whether any of that has shown its face on the organization that you mentioned, Dick.
The organization that I mentioned?
No. I'm sorry. I got that confused. You didn't mention it.
Robert, I think it was the Cape Cod Climate Change Collaborative.
Yes, right.
Yeah, I don't know for sure the answer. I do know that they have a sort of environmental justice type of initiative. I think they have they've recently reorganized their board, and they have a committee, I believe, that's focusing on reaching out to underserved populations, low-income housing, et cetera. So
right.
That's on their radar. What they're actually doing, I don't know.
The other issue that we have, I think, is we have an elderly population. We have a fairly high percentage of people over the age of, say, 80, some of whom don't drive. And that's one of the things that I think we shouldn't lose track of in any program we do. How are they affected in terms of emergency situations?
So anyway, the Global Covenant is looking for, descriptions of things that have been done that are specifically recognizing such groups. Mm-hmm. They want to make sure that when decisions are being made, those factors are being taken into consideration.
Okay.
Can I ask, if it would help me if we continue with that, just so I can wrap it up with, is there anything else with the liaison with other towns? Does anybody else have anything to report?
Well, going forward, what are our current plans? Let's talk about that a little bit with other towns. In order to get to net zero, you have to focus on home heating, because that's one of the big items. Transportation, electrification, and the fact that the electricity should be green, 100% green. And those three items actually cover 90% of the problem. Everything else is down in the noise for conservation. So do we have any plans currently, now that the pandemic is sort of winding down and it looks like we can begin planning for in-person meetings?
I had a suggestion that I wanted to continue with. If you recall, I sent out an email that I forwarded about breaker boxes, and GB gave some really great feedback on that, about it's from a organization called Rewiring America, something like that. But it's about the installation, upgrading breaker boxes in homes.
Okay, so I had a lot of trouble understanding what that was about. And I do have an electrical engineering background to some extent. What was it about? Is this the outside connection?
You know, I'm not sure. It caught my attention because it's green energy and electrification. But GB, you know, you had a lot of feedback on that. Do you have an idea of where they're going with this?
So the impression I got was that in order to prepare the country for changing from fossil fuel type of heating and cooling, or heating anyway, to green energy, it basically means converting those systems to electricity. And the issue is how many houses, buildings, whatever, have the proper electrical breaker systems to allow the installation of these additional electricity consuming devices. And I think what it's talking about is the analogy I use, it's similar to, you know, manufacturers converting to electric cars. That's great, but if you don't have charging stations as convenient as gasoline stations, it's going to slow down the conversion. And, you know, the Biden infrastructure plan supposedly had a good chunk of money in there to get the charging station infrastructure spread out across the country. Well, it's the same thing with when you get down to individual buildings, particularly, you know, residential buildings. Many of them don't necessarily have the you know, sufficiently sized breaker box, the mains, the drop line into the mains, enough breaker positions on the bus, whatever, and also, you know, 240 as opposed to 120. So they may have to change out the breaker box. They may have to change out the line feed from the where the drop comes to the house into the house and so forth. And the idea on this is to have a program that looks into that so that it simplifies converting from fossil fuel sources of heating to you know, clean electric sources of heating.
Okay, so let's change the terminology and use the right names. The first part is the line that goes from the telephone pole to your house is called the entrance. Okay, and the first part is you're talking about a 240 volt, a 200 amp entrance to the house. Most houses were built with a 100 amp entrance. And so the first thing that has to happen is you need 200 amps minimum. And typically, when the houses were built, they just ran a wire either through the air or underground. The current standard is that wire now needs to be inside a pipe, okay, and then insulated. And I know because I just went through all this, although I didn't do it, but you need a 200 amp entrance and it needs to be in a pipe. That's the first part. Then it hits the meter. The meter has an issue in that it needs to be a net meter, which means it goes both ways, and it needs to have some capability for time of day monitoring. because if we're going to be all electric, we're going to have very time of day rates in which electricity costs less at night and more during the hours of peak demand, so that cars can be charged at night, maybe laundry done at night, and that during the day when you hit the maximum heating or air conditioning load, people are not charging their cars at the same time. So you need to change the meter to be both a time of day usage meter and a net meter, so it can go both ways in case you're generating electricity. Then you have to change the breaker box itself. Although frankly, you can add a second box next to the first as an overflow box if the entrance is enough. That's usually not the limiting factor. What's limiting is the entrance to the house and the meter itself. That's why I couldn't see why you called it a breaker box problem in that paper. But I just went through all this because I just wired up my house for a 60 amp or 50 amp charging station for an electric car without changing the entrance and without changing the meter and without changing the breaker box.
What level is the 60 amp? What level charging station?
Level 2.
Level 2.
Yeah. So Dick, what's your main breaker size in the box?
It's 100. I have a 100 amp entrance.
Okay.
That's what limits it. I have an overflow. It adds up to a lot more than 100 amps going everywhere. But the theory is they don't all happen at the same time. Probably have, if everything were going at once, I probably have 250 amps.
All right. So did you have a second feed from the meter to a second breaker box?
No.
Did you have to rewire from the meter to the breaker box to accept 200 amps?
I don't have 200 amps. I only have 100 amps. I didn't come in with I did not go to a 200 amp entrance. The reason that I didn't was not that I'd have to dig another trench. You were going to love this. But when those guys put in the backup generator, they only sized it for 100 amps. So it's my backup generator that's limiting me from upgrading to 200 amps. It cost me $1,500 to fix it. So I have my car charging and I don't have 100 amp, and I only have a 100 amp entrance.
And you're using air source heat pumps.
And I'm using air source heat pumps, two of them.
Well, I guess what I was saying is if you have to upgrade to 200 amp,
right?
You not only will you, is it a case of probably replacing the breaker box. I mean, you can replace the main breakers in an existing breaker box, but
you can put an overflow box. You can add an overflow box. You don't have to replace anything.
Okay, you can do that too.
Yeah, it's much cheaper to add an overflow box. We did that 10 years ago.
But then the question becomes, what's the total amperage that would suffice if you're going to air source heat pumps?
Well, I'm running 2 air source heat pumps charging a car, and I still have a 100 amp entrance.
Okay.
You just don't do everything at the same time.
So what this all sounds like, my question is, when should we start engaging the public about this?
I guess it would be worthwhile talking about things like this.
Yeah.
100 amp entrance, if it's probably going to run $10 a foot if you're burying a cable, right? That's the number we were quoted for digging trenches and running a cable when we did solarized out of Cape Energize, right, David? My recollection is right. It's $10 a foot. So if you've got an 80-foot run, you're going to spend $800 on it, maybe more. And with a what, you know, so that might be $1,200 or $1,500. We can talk about it, but it's not necessary to do that. The real thing is, you know, the point is I did not change my entrance, I did not change my meter, and I did not add an overflow box in order to add an electric car or to add two air source heat pumps.
So Dick, what you're saying is very useful information for public consumption, along with this other discussion. I mean, I think just most of us have no idea what to do moving forward. And yet that's where the trend is going to go. We're going to all have to defossilize fuel our homes. So
no, I would be more comfortable with a 200 amp entrance, and I would have done it if it weren't for the generator.
A lot of the issues here in my mind have to do with the variability of individual homes and sizing and usage and all that stuff. So I don't think we can, there's not really a one size fits all.
Absolutely. I have a relatively small house.
Right. Some people do need to upgrade their panels, do need to have a higher power, whether they use sub panels or whatever. You can have multiple sub panels for that matter. And it just depends on the situation.
Right. I did add another sub panel, but I stuck it 50 feet away because if I ever had to go to 200 amps, I would run a second 100 amp entrance and have 2 meters. Because that way my generator could cover the first part. Yeah. And the second entrance would just cover the 2 cars. I don't need to go to a second entrance till I get a second electric car.
Dick, do you have electric stove as well?
Yes. I have no natural gas or propane. I have backup heating oil, but it's backup. I used 75 gallons of oil last winter.
I mean, the real issue
here. Sun off the water, Dick. Because you get all that sun off the water.
Well, I get a lot of wind off the water. It's cold.
You get a lot of sun warming up your house. It's awesome.
I only get the sun in the summertime. In the wintertime, I get a lot of wind.
Okay.
I mean, the issue here is what, in order to achieve this objective in 2050, what kind of changes need to be made? And so, you know, I think that's a complex topic.
Right, it is. And I would recommend people should start thinking about 200 amp entrances. And they should also think about net meters with time of day. But that has to get fought through the state. The state has to tell Eversource they are required to put in time of day meters everywhere. That, you know, and whether you need a second breaker box or not, that really depends on just how much room there is in your existing box, because it's only adding, well, one 240 volt circuit for every air source heat pump and one 240 volt circuit for every car. So that's at most 4.
Well, you're going to have a
2, which is 8. Every house, by the way, is wired for 240.
You're going to have a 240 volt circuit for your stove?
You already have that, I assume.
No, I hit my house has propane stove, oil heated hot water. The furnace heats the house and the hot water.
Right, I forgot that. I also added an air source heat pump, and that's another 240 volt circuit.
Yeah, I mean, if you're starting from scratch, it adds up.
Yeah, but I didn't start from scratch. I had a 60-year-old wiring system, and I never increased it. You're right. I have an air source heat pump on a 240 volt circuit, 2 for the hot water, 2 for the heating the house, 1 for the stove, 1 for the dryer. So
Right.
that's 5, and 1 for the car, that's 6. They're still running off the same 100 amp entrance.
Let us know when you get a notice from Cape Light Compact saying that you're using more energy than most houses are, and we can help you to conserve electricity, because that will happen for you.
It won't, of course, because I have solar panels, so I'm using net zero.
Well, that's true. But I mean, most people, I mean, so there, I mean, it is complicated because is there the infrastructure for Eversource down here to deal with that when people make that transition? You know,
you're right, Lily. But the biggest Eversource infrastructure issue is the meter. It's not the wires and it's not the transformers. It's the meter on every single house in town, which needs to be changed to a time of day usage meter. Because once we go to that, then the load on the lines evens out, and they do not need bigger wires and bigger transformers.
So think about it. I mean, if everybody's charging their vehicles at night, and you know, I mean, and there's the heating oil and the heating hot water, and, you know, and everything's transitioned over to electricity. You know, especially if people do not have solar, tremendous.
Okay, charging your car at night puts no effect on the peak load. All right, remember, the peak load occurs between 4 and 8 p.m.
Right.
Okay, so if you charge your car at midnight and you're using time of day rates, typically, if they're charging you 11 cents, that's the wholesale rate at which you're buying electricity during the day. At night, that similar rate is 3 cents. Okay, because there's more, because the wind turbines in the system and the rivers and the hydro are all running day and night, and they have to produce load. I know that in Texas, where my son was involved in buying electricity, during the day they would pay about 6 cents for electricity, and at night the producers would pay them 2 cents to take it, because they had to dump the load and there wasn't enough demand. So they were getting paid to use electricity at night. Now, it's not as extreme in New England, but it's the same process, that electricity is much cheaper at night than during the day. And that means that there's no load at night on the wires. The wires are built to handle the load from 4 to 8 p.m. on a hot summer day. That's the maximum load. And at night, those wires are more than adequate. So if you can shift the load from cars charging to be after midnight to 6 a.m., for example, it will have no impact on the infrastructure. But in order to make that happen, you need meters that run time of day usage.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah, I think we all get that, you know.
Sam's package.
Suzanne, does that your questioning? Or do you have more questions about that?
No, I mean, I was just wondering if it made sense to, as the Energy Committee, to join up with other energy and climate action committees and make this a regional educational thing. But it just sounds like it's very complex. And Dick, if I understood correctly, you think that will be mobilized from the state on coming down.
It needs to be, because it's the Cape Light Compact that's been pushing this for years. And they have been trying to get the state to force Eversource to put time of use meters in everybody's house. And Eversource has said, no, we'll do it as needed. And then they charge $100 a person. Okay, whereas if they did it for everybody, it would cost about $15 or $20 a person. All right, so it's the state that's got to mandate it. I mean, it's not the only thing you need is a way to report back on a minute by minute basis how much electricity is being used, which nowadays is just you put in a Wi-Fi connection that reports, that runs about $12 retail, a little something that broadcasts on Wi-Fi. Or if they're clever, they can use internet over the power line because they've got wires going everywhere.
Dick, was there anything in the recent climate bill about this issue, or is there legislation being worked on?
The climate bill is not very specific about how to get there, just that you have to get there. And since this is the only obvious way to get there, it's going to happen. I think. Is
anybody working on it in the legislature?
No, I think it has to be the Department of Public Utilities that needs to work on it once they get their head screwed on. They need to stop. They need to start working how to reduce energy peak usage and how to switch from natural gas. I hate that term. How to switch from burning methane to using electricity. It's not natural gas, it's methane. Okay, methane is one of the worst greenhouse gases you can have.
So is there any way we could apply pressure on the Department of Public Utilities?
I don't know. I have to think about it. I think through the state, right? It's the best way to do it. Yeah, to write to the state. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we should.
We could get our legislators, Julian Sear, involved in the issue, perhaps.
Yeah, Sarah Peak is having some kind of or maybe it's she's coming to the Democratic Town Committee meeting on Saturday.
She is. That would be an opportunity.
Yeah, right. She's coming. Maybe we should talk to her about that.
Yeah.
Bring it up there.
So one of the subcommittee groups that I attended with Energy and Environment, EEA, they were talking about this. And I know that in the one of the stakeholder groups with Cape Cod Station, they were also talking about this issue. So I know the Cape Cod Commission is working on a climate action plan, and that's going to be out shortly, I presume. And
we have a meeting on Thursday coming up to review something. They haven't said what, but it's probably going to be the climate action plan.
So I presume that there will be something like
that. I only wish, Lily. I only wish they would. That's specific. I don't know.
Well, it looks pretty darn. What we've seen, Dick, is pretty darn detailed. I mean, you look at these spreadsheets that they're producing, and it's really pretty detailed. So, I think that will be something we'll all take a look at once it comes out.
Well, you should ask the specific question. Does this plan call or advocate for time of usage, time of day metering? And specifically, where does it do it? And you'll find, I suspect, they don't. Okay. That's a very good question. Be specific, because we know time of day rates would shift usage to the nighttime, at least for things like electric cars, where it's completely optional as to where you charge it. Because the average car on a 200, well, you know, I know it's a 240 volt circuit. I use maybe, I can recharge in 2 hours what I use in a typical day. Since I don't go 200 miles or 400 miles a day, but if I drive to Provincetown or Orleans or Hyannis, in 2 or 3 hours, it's recharged. And that means it can be done between midnight and 6 a.m. as easily as any other time.
So would the meter do that automatically?
No, the car does it automatically.
The car does it.
Yeah, you set the time in the car when it should charge.
Great.
I was wondering, is there any update as far as the grant proposal status?
Could you talk into your microphone, Lily? It's hard to hear.
Yeah. Is there an update as far as the grant proposal status?
Yeah, there is.
Okay, you want to move on. Okay, let's move on.
Okay. The MVP vulnerabilities grant for low-lying road grant vulnerabilities that last cycle we worked on with Cape Cod Commission is back on the docket. It's going to be resubmitted on May 7th. And Carol and I will be working with Cape Cod Commission. We're doing a little bit more this time with editing very academic language and also just researching certain things. Just extra stuff that we need to know. But that being said, our committee last time around, we were one, okay, I'm losing my thought. Okay, so we had submitted a letter of support in favor of this, and we're gonna have to update it. And I have the letter of support, but I don't have it with anybody's signature. And I'm trying to remember if Dick, if you had, if it was your name that was signed to that on behalf of the committee. But in any case, we have to update at least the date.
If the letter of support is from the committee, then
Yeah.
I guess it would be either all of us or me, but let's make it me because it's easier than rounding up 7 people.
Okay, so what I can do is just forward you last year's document and
Right.
you can update
Now
it.
tell me how much money the town has to put up for this.
Okay, that is going to be 7,400 and something.
And do we have to find that money in the budget?
Okay, so it really depends on whether that matching fund that the town voted on last year, the 50,000, will that be available to us for this?
So you don't know and I don't know either. I guess.
Right. I mean, the other thing that we can do is it can be in kind matching. That's a possibility. However, you know, we did request those funds for something
and we
like
didn't
this.
Spend it. And now
And
the question is it did just disappear or not? And we don't know the answer to that question.
Right.
Since Heather is in charge of coordinating this grant for all the 6 towns, there would surely be at least some in-kind staff time.
Hillary, yeah.
Hillary
Lemos, yes.
Lemos.
You know, if it's too late to put an article in, which it may be, let's identify a line item in the budget we can increase to cover it. So that at town meeting, we can make a motion to add money to a line item to be spent on matching grants.
Dick, would you check with Maria to see if that is a possibility, or Danny's going to?
It's always a possibility to increase a line item in the budget, Lily. It's done all the time. Decrease it also.
But I mean, could you ask her what the best way to
yes, I will call her and find out the status of the. Right.
Everybody, I'm sorry, I've got to sign off now. I only had an hour today.
Thank you, David.
See you later.
Okay.
So in all this talk, where does the way of replacing propane and fuel oil as a way of heating houses, what needs to be done by who in respect to financing the transformation of all the houses that are currently equipped that way?
So the best way, Robert, is a loan program, because in general, switching to electricity saves enough money so that over 7 years, you'll get all your money back. And loan programs are being worked at the state level and the county level with Cape Light Compact. Our role would probably be mostly educational once the programs are worked out, because air source heat pumps do save money.
My impression from the talk that we had by the guy about heat pumps is that I would need to keep my oil burner long term.
Right, but if you don't use it, it lasts a lot longer. I kept mine. I've had air source heat pumps for 5 years. I still have an oil burner. Last year I used 90 gallons of oil because it got cold, but that's a lot better than the 1,500 I was using before, or whatever it was.
And you've done this with the heat pumps?
Yeah, 2 air source heat pumps. So and I just looked up the numbers. He told us a very high number. I spent $7,700 for the heat pumps, and I got a $2,500 rebate. I spent $8,200 and got a $2,500 rebate. So it cost roughly $6,000, $5,500 for 2 air source heat pumps. And so that was about 3 years worth of oil.
How do we get rid of our oil burners in the long term?
I don't know. Maybe the air source heat pumps become the reason you need the air source heat pumps, the oil burner, is twofold. One, if you have older units and it gets very cold, they're not as efficient. But as time goes on, these units are getting better and better, and they now operate down to 20 below. And we don't get 20 below temperatures around here. Okay, so and the second thing is you can have power failures, and that has to worry about some backup power. But again, my oil burner doesn't work if there's a power failure either, because I need the fans to run. So a power failure means I can't heat my house, period. At least with an electric thing, you can have backup generators or battery backup, or the grid can have battery backup. But in an electric failure, you don't have heat, period, right? Because oil burners need heat, need electricity. They need fans and they need a spark to get going. So your backup oil burner is there mostly when it gets extremely cold. And it doesn't get 20 degrees below zero for extended periods of time around here. 20 below, not 20 degrees.
Yeah, I agree that I was surprised too, Carol. You know, I thought once you have a air source heat pump, that means that you get rid of the oil furnace, but that's not what they're recommending at all.
No, why would you? It's there, it's paid for, you just don't have to use it.
Well, that's fine. But anyway, so was that the only grant you had updates on, or were there other?
No, that's it for now.
Okay. And Dick, what is the status of the landfill?
The lease was signed, the lease was transmitted to Eversource. The next step is for Eversource to install some telephone poles. I was hoping that would happen within a month, but Amoresco said allow 3 months. In any event, we're up to Eversource at this point. I'm still optimistic it'll happen quicker because we're not in the snow season, you know. Hopefully it's their off season and they will have time. But Eversource has to install 5 poles and then the wiring has to happen, and the wiring is probably a week's worth of work. So anywhere between 1 and 3 months. But at least it's moving forward. The town has done its thing and Amoresco has done their thing. And GB, you've gotten all the information, right? And that form is filled out, right?
Yeah, well, I sent the form in, and then we had this discussion about whether the elementary school was a separate thing, taking 30% or whatever. And I think we cleared up that the elementary school is incorporated in the 70% of the credits that go to the town of Wellfleet.
Yes.
Okay, so the original form that I sent in is the one to use. I sent in a subsequent form that said that if 70% was going to the elementary school and the remaining 30% was going to the elementary school and remaining 70% was going to the town, how that would be divvied up. But I put that in a separate column and beside the original column. So the original column is what they can use. But in addition to that, just so everybody's up to date on this, I was down there last week. I stopped by Town Hall. Jane Tesson, who's the assistant accountant, I guess, gave me a full box of copies of Eversource bills for 25 accounts for 2 years. So I am in the process of transferring the appropriate information on those bills to a spreadsheet so that we can compare that to the figures that we have already provided to Amoresco, and hopefully if there's any major changes, we can get those to Jerry Cantor before Eversource gets everything wired up and bills start flowing. But if they do, we can still make changes anyway.
But we should only bother the process if there's more than a 5% change somewhere.
Yeah. But I mean, this will help
because we can always fix it in 6 months.
There are 25 accounts.
Yeah.
Well, there are actually 26 if you count the elementary school. But some of these accounts are for street lights. Some of them are for standalone lighting, like at the police station or the town hall or something like that. Little. One of them's for the old fire station on Route 6. I mean, if that thing, the bills on that run, $10 a month.
Off the top of my head, I suspect street lighting doesn't count. Maybe, but I know it's not billed by usage. It's billed on an estimate of usage that's done once in the lifetime of the street light.
Right.
So I don't, but maybe you can apply it. There are special rules. If you can avoid the streetlights, I would. Well, however, whatever's done is done. The other thing is that the numbers you supplied had to be multiplied by 0.7 because the regional school system got 0.3.
Right.
So ours should only have added up to 70%, not 100%.
Well, they add up to 100%, but you just take the amount that you're going to get, and you take that Amoresco is going to get, and you take 70% of that and spread it out according to the 100% figures that are there.
Yeah. Okay.
But one thing while we're at it, and this is just more for clarification. So the minutes say, the agenda says effort for consolidation of billing of town meters. That's closed, and that's closed because we found out that Eversource would not allow the credits to be allocated to the master billing account if we set one up. So we just said, forget it. The Amoresco thing will accomplish what we need to do, and that takes care of that. So I would just simply call this, instead of, effort to consolidate billing of town meters, it's, effort to allocate solar credits to town accounts.
So can I ask you to try and draft a letter to the Department of Public Utilities explaining why this Eversource should change its mind, should be ordered to change their mind, and that in order to apply smart T credits to the town as a whole, it would be much more convenient than making the work of allocating them to accounts. I mean, it's less work on both sides. It's less work for us, less work for Eversource. Why shouldn't DPW just order Eversource to do it?
You mean DPU?
Yes, DPU, yeah, Department of Public Utilities, right.
I can give a shot, but I think I need to speak with you offline first, Dick, because
okay, sure, we could work together.
That's a lot of. I don't want to go down that path if we.
It has nothing to do with. It'll take years to happen, but let's just fire a shot. You know. And you don't have to get very technical. Explain all the work we need to do. Explain all the work Eversource needs to do, and say it would be much simpler if we could apply our town-wide credits to our town-wide bill. Eversource says it's not possible. Why don't you tell them to make it so? Right? Everyone wins.
Okay.
Let's just do it, Okay. The new state legislation, has anyone else looked at it?
Excuse me for a moment. I'll be right back.
Okay. Briefly, it's what we were hoping all along. It sets limits to 2030, 2040, and 2050. And the state legislature said a 50% reduction from 1990 levels by 2050, 75% by 2040, and 100% by 2050, net zero. That's slightly more ambitious than the governor's goal, which was to only get to 90% below by 2050, and then achieve net zero because he's taking credit for carbon sequestration. The state says sequestration is icing on the cake. Will not only go below 1990 levels, but will in fact take more out than we're putting in. So it's beyond net zero, at least in the interim. Well, anyway, maybe they're about the same. let me think. It's net zero by 2050. I guess they both were net zero by 2050. But there are also supposed to be 3 and 5 year plans, and the state has to issue 3-year plans and 5-year plans. And they're going to be detailed because they have to measure progress against those plans, which means that if in 5 years they're not coming down fast enough, they have to take more stringent measures. So maybe there's hope for our getting the state to start reporting on home heating oil, because it's one way they can make that happen. I don't know. It's an interesting bill. You really should read it. Although I guess it's hard to read. You should read the summaries. It's hard to read the bill itself because it says line 3 of this law now reads this way, and line 7 of another section reads this way. And without the original laws in front of you, it's harder to figure out what they're saying. So you should really read the summaries.
Okay, thank you very much.
And the state has had a couple of seminars on their plan. But now their plan is overtaken by the new state law, which is a little more ambitious. Fundamentally, though, the bottom line is that they're not going to sell ICE vehicles after 2035. Electric cars cannot be, there will be all electric cars after 2035. And the grid hopefully will be all renewable by 2035 as well. So that's the line in the sand that's being drawn. And then the big thing to work on beyond that is home heating, because in this county, between home heating and electric and cars, that's where 95% of our energy is going. All right. So if you look at the big picture, there are 2 things to work on: electric cars and home heating. And at least we can educate people on both of those. So maybe we should try and figure out if there's some good summary of the new state legislation that we could look at, you know, a YouTube video or something, or seminars, something like that. Anyone else have any thoughts on this, on the state law? No? Okay. Anyway, it showed that the state, it passed immediately. The governor managed to veto it by letting the term of the legislature run out and sending it back to them when they didn't have enough time to do anything about it. And they just turned it around by making it the first thing they passed in the new session. And this time he didn't veto it because that technique wasn't going to work. So he saved himself the embarrassment of vetoing it. There's a lot in it about environmental justice in the law, in worrying about low-income families, for example, and how they get access to all these programs. Okay, how about liaison with other committees? Does anyone have anything to report?
Yes.
Robert.
I have been helping the Truro Climate Action Committee with their process. They've joined the Global Covenant, and I spent some time with them explaining the whole greenhouse gas inventory process, and they're now executing that. And I just submitted a version for me to review, which I've gone through, and they're making good progress. So that's the path that Truro is going to take. So
good. That's liaison with other towns. How about committee liaison? Do we have anything else on that? No.
What was that, Dick? I didn't hear
committee that. Liaison with other committees.
Well, do we want to set up a meeting and invite other climate action committees
in other towns?
Yeah, that was one idea that we had, I thought.
Okay.
We could talk about if we want to do education efforts, say webinars that would apply to the Outer Cape.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I just make a comment on webinars?
Yeah.
This sort of covers webinars and electric vehicles. I'm on the mailing list for this group called Green Newton, which is working on the same kind of things we are in the city of Newton, and they sent out a weekly newsletter, and one of the items in that newsletter was this thing for Drive Electric Earth Day. Energy New England drives Electric Earth Day, Mansfield, Mass, April 22nd, 2021. Says this is an online event only with no physical location, Thursday, April 22nd, 6 to 7 p.m. And the topics are EV, this is a webinar, that's why I'm bringing it up. The topics are EV, Electric Vehicle 101, environmental benefits, incentives, and legislative action. So it's a 1 hour webinar for people who are interested in electric vehicles and these related topiks on it. And this says it's co-sponsored by the towns of Braintree, Concord, Danvers, Middleborough, Lakeville, Norwood, Taunton, Raynham, Wellesley, and Westfield.
Wow.
So it's intended to celebrate Earth Day. It says learn all the EV basics, how EV help the earth in your pocketbook, and more interactive Q&A to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So I just throw that out in terms of
what day of the week? What is it again?
Say again.
When is it again?
It's Thursday, April 22nd, 2021. What I'll do is
what time?
6 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay. Would we like to vote to officially endorse it and post it on the town website?
Well, I think it might be worthwhile somebody, attending it and, passing judgment on its value. But
why don't we just put it out on the website? We can all attend it and get people in town to do it. It's part of a public education.
Okay.
I mean, they're doing it presumably for all their citizens, right? Not for their committees.
Well, okay. Let me do this, Dick, if I could then. Let me send you the newsletter. And you just simply go to this article in the newsletter, and then that has a link to the Drive Electric Earth Day website that has more details about this particular event.
But I would like that, if suitable for the town, I mean for the general population, I'd like to put it on the town calendar.
We probably need to ask their permission to do that. There are limits to how many people can be on a webinar sometimes.
Well, let's find out whether or not it's for townspeople in general, or whether it's for committees.
Towns.
But if it's for the general public, in which there are no limits because you can broadcast things.
Right.
okay? And they intended for everyone in town to go listen, or as many people as want to listen. Why don't we add our town to it? So what is it called again? Earth? What is the URL?
It's the website says Drive Electric Earth Day, and the particular event is Energy New England Drives Electric Earth Day. But I'm gonna send out this newsletter to everybody right now, and it's one of the articles in this newsletter. You just sort of have to scroll down until you come to this particular article. It's several articles down, but it says join the virtual Energy New England Drives Electric Earth Day on April 22nd. And then, you know, there's a thing that says read more. You click on that, that takes you to the Green Newton website. It tells you more about it, and that gives you a link to the actual event itself.
Okay.
Yeah, you're at it now, Dick.
Yeah, I know. See, it says become a sponsor. That looks like it's money, since they have levels.
Well, if you look, wait a minute, scroll up to the top. Let me just make sure you're on the event part of it.
It's attend event.
All right, so join us for. So if you can. That's not going to provide a lot.
Okay.
You want see if there's one that says Mansfield, Mass.
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
right there. So click on the Mansfield, Mass. That's what I'm looking at. You can see it there. There you go. Okay, that's got the whole thing. And if you keep going further down, it has a thing about people that have certain types of cars are registered, you know, so forth. Mm-hmm. See this registered attendees, 66, you know, they've got all these different types of EVs and so on. I'm not quite sure exactly what that's intended to convey, but.
Yeah, the different types of vehicles that are available now. So can I ask you, DB, would you follow up? Like, you know, Carol said, I think it would make sense that we, you know, if we're allowed to put the link on our website, you know, I think it would be inappropriate just to vote to do it without knowing if it's appropriate or allowed. I mean, would you?
Well, let's assume.
Find out, and then
let's find out if it's appropriate. But if we decide it is appropriate, our website doesn't get the same traffic as the town website. So I would love to put it on the town's website, right, and say that if we think it's appropriate, we should try to sponsor it as well, add our name as an energy committee to be co-sponsors. And they may not get our name in on time because there's not a lot of time, but at least we can say it's an official, we think it's an activity that we are endorsing.
GB, could you do that? Open that?
Yeah, I'll go back to Green Newton and see if they've got a contact themselves at this event.
But I would also like the committee to endorse this if GB thinks it's appropriate, and say that if he thinks it's appropriate, we would like to endorse this as well. And then ask the town to put it on the town website if it's appropriate for general publicity. Because our website doesn't get a whole lot of traffic, but if we'd like a lot of people to go view it, this would be, if we endorse it, we could ask the town to put it on the town's website.
And maybe mention it at a select board meeting if there's one between now and then.
But we don't know, we can't get on the agenda fast enough.
But at the beginning, they let you make announcements?
Yes, we could announce it at that.
Well, the other possibility is if it is a webinar, you know, they could record it and it's something that we might be able to reuse.
Yeah, after the fact, we can put a link to it.
What's the group email for the Energy Committee?
Committee at Wellfleet Energy and Climate Action.org.
There we go. I got it.
So Dick, to your point, I think also too, maybe we could, because of the timing of this, we could with Maria and have it put on our website if he thinks, finds out that it's appropriate, and it looks like something we could do. Does that make sense? I mean, I can't imagine anybody on this call would object to it. If they do, they can voice their opinion about it.
No, but so what I'd like to ask the town to put it on the town's website also.
Right.
So let's make a motion so we can say it's an official act of the committee that we're requesting it.
Okay, but I mean, there's so many contingencies. Do we really want to do
Well,
that?
we'll let GB decide if it's appropriate. We'll authorize GB to decide if it's appropriate.
So do you really think a motion's needed? That we could just say there was a consensus in the committee?
Well, okay, a consensus is fine. But I'd like the committee to agree that this is something we should do as part of our public education, to put this forward and put it on the town website as recommended.
Yeah, if GB
sounds good.
It sounds good to me.
Okay, so it's a consensus. Is there anyone opposed? So then it's unanimous that we have a consensus of the committee to investigate this, and if it's appropriate for the general public, to add it to the town website. And in any event, we will add a link to this to our committee's website, and we will all try to sign up for this. Okay? And GB will contact them and say we would also like to be co-sponsors. Okay?
Good.
And GB, you'll contact the event organizers?
I'm going to attempt to. I'm going to start with Green Newton and see
why don't you just click contact on the website?
Okay.
So contact the event organizers.
Okay.
Say you're authorized by the committee to say we'd like to participate as a town. And
we can't say that, but
as a town we would. It's the Energy Committee.
The Energy Committee of Wellfleet.
Yeah, right. It looks like a good thing, It's getting to the point where electric cars are becoming mainstream. I think there are now about 15 cars that are supposed to go on sale this year. There's a Ford, there's a Chevy, and there's a Volkswagen that are viable contenders in the not exorbitant price range.
I have a question. I wonder if anybody else saw this, but I was driving by Eastham Town Hall yesterday, and it was too quick to count, but I could have sworn I saw a fleet of white cars that said net zero on them parked over there. Is anybody else aware of this?
I didn't see it, no.
Okay.
In Town Hall?
Around there, yeah. I'll pay closer attention the next time I'm over there. It was the first time I ever noticed it.
Okay. Well, why don't you call Town Hall and find out?
Yeah. Okay.
Just call Eastham Town Hall and ask them what it was about.
Okay. Great idea. So do we want to set up a meeting with other climate action committees, Outer Cape, or however we wanted to arrange it, just to get together and share thoughts on what our needs and objectives are,
Right.
you know, what they're thinking of doing and
I think that's a good idea. And I think that Eastham has now established a climate action committee.
yeah.
So we should contact them.
And then I know that Truro Climate Action Committee is definitely interested in meeting on that basis.
So Robert and Suzanne, would you like to coordinate that?
Sure. Okay. And then that would include Orleans and Provincetown as well. And who else?
Yes, Orleans, Truro, yes, Orleans through Provincetown.
Orleans through Provincetown. Okay.
So you said Eastham now has a committee?
I believe, yeah.
Climate action, I think.
Yeah.
Do we want to set up a date and a time for our next meeting?
Yeah, is there, oh, for our meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, how about the first Tuesday again? Is that okay with everyone?
May 4th?
Yes.
Yeah. At 7 o'clock?
7 or 4?
Well, we thought we would alternate, right?
Okay, what is that what everyone wants?
Alternate?
Well, Carol said she would be with that.
Are you still on the phone?
Yeah, I'm still in the meeting.
An hour and a half?
Hard to believe. Okay, well, let's do it. Well, Carol, are you okay with the 7 o'clock for next time?
Hello. Let's see what I have.
Good. I gotta go. Sorry.
All right. Are you okay with both times, 4 and 7?
Yeah.
Okay, Carol.
You're muted, Carol.
Sorry, yes, I can do either.
Oh, well, if you can do either, let's stick with 4, because I think. So is that okay, or did you prefer 7?
He doesn't like 4.
You know, we had said that we were good, you know, that 7 was our meeting time, Dick. And then
okay, you prefer 7, is that it?
Yes, I want.
Okay, okay. I'm okay with either as well.
Yeah, same here.
Let's switch to 7 on Tuesday, May 4th.
Yeah.
Okay, 7 p.m.
Okay, as long as it's by video, there's no driving issue, right?
Right.
So, sorry, just a quick question about setting up this meeting with the other climate action committees. Any suggested dates and times?
Use your discretion.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else anyone wants to bring up?
I'm wondering if we're ever going to get to fleshing out the local comprehensive plan. We talked about that, doing that as a long-term project. And I'm wondering if maybe we ought to have a subcommittee working on that.
Okay. It definitely ought to look into the state law and its implications, right?
Yeah.
Are there any volunteers for the committee? I will.
I'd be glad to work with someone one or two other people taking a stab at that.
Yeah, I can work on it.
Great.
Yeah, I'll work on it with you if you take the lead on it.
Okay. I think three people would be great. Thank you.
Yes.
Is there anything else? Shall I make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay. I guess we're adjourned. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good rest of the week, everybody.
You too.
See you next month.
Bye.
Bye. I think I'll wait and just make sure that Dick is okay with this because he's obviously walked away, Carol. So I'll just hang on and tell him we adjourned.
Okay. You can't hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Dick, we adjourned.
Okay, we're adjourned. I know.
We're adjourned. Okay. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.